So we're moving on to step 2, which is to release your stress. Everybody comfortable with step 1? You got to figure out which hunger is it, and then if it's real, give it something healthy. If it's stress, we got to use these tools instead, all right? So raise your hands if you get salty cravings. Wow, that's almost uniform, all right? That doesn't leave too many people left for sweet. Oh, no, no, okay, wait, there's a third one here. You got to raise both hands for both. Okay. I was thinking that that might be where you all were going. So here's the good news and bad news. The bad news first is, like I said, you cannot stop. You're not going to stop hunger. You're not going to stop stress hunger. It's going to happen. The good news is there's a couple tools we can use to deal with it. One was that little checklist. So here, now that you know the secret. So on one side of this little card, I have the list, and in bold, and then on the back side is just a little reminder, the 2 steps to take. So you guys take one that way, and you take one that way. And I didn't make it a postcard so that you could keep it on you and have it with you at work, or per se. The good news is this, the tools that we can use to manage it. So my first tool I'm going to tell you is called harm reduction. All right? Here's what I mean by this. The first big bag of these that I bought, these pretzel M&Ms, if you've ever eaten pretzel M&Ms, you know they are dangerous. I actually would call them my crack food, because they're just so, and they make them that way on purpose, you all. They are. They make them that way on purpose. So here's what I mean by harm reduction. When I first realized that I ate the whole bag, you know, within the weekend, and I'm talking, you know, the budget making bag, because I like to stretch my budget. So first off, I don't keep them in my house anymore, ever. And the second thing I do is, if I really have to have them, because I think if you deprive yourself, you just set yourself up for a binge later on, right? So what I'll do is I go to the store. Hopefully now the store is far enough away that maybe between then and there I can do something and that hunger craving will subside, so I don't act on it. But if I do act on it, then I always buy a smaller size. So they don't make them anymore, but I used to buy king size, and actually 2 king size, because 2 king size was better than the whole quarter pounder or the whole pounder, or even like things that you know that you cannot control, have no control over. 1, my encouragement is don't keep them in your house. And 2, when you go to buy them, say, okay, I know I'm doing stress eating, right? But I'm going to do this. So instead of overdoing it, I'm just going to reduce the harm that I'm doing to myself. Because honestly, a bag of king size, unless of course I have diabetes, but even then, it's less harm if I eat 1 king size bag than if I eat a whole big other bag. And I learn new foods, you guys, that I have no control over. Like I learn foods that, you know, that like my most recent food, just to share with you all, is Skinny Pop organic. Now, I probably would eat the plain stuff too, but the reason that it is because the points that goes with that. Now, you could look at me and say, Carol, why are you worried about your weight? But the truth of the matter is that I actually have lived my laws. And so my law number 1, which is a whole nother workshop, is don't put more gas in the tank than it can hold. Because we create spare tanks. And so when my pants start to get tight, that's when I know I'm in trouble. And I don't go buy a bigger tank. Because you know what happens when you buy a bigger tank? You fill it. If makes sense? I mean, it's all logic. It's all car logic. And then once you get the gas in the tank, what do you have to do to get the gas tank to empty? Well, you got to run the engine. You got to run the car. So that's where activity becomes important. Even if you're sitting at work, one of the things I used to tell my patients is that even if you're sitting at work and you just are kind of doing this, guess what? You all are burning. So I'm just picking up my feet and tapping them. Or fidgety people, actually, it's like the idles, like leaving your car idling. You still are using some gas, if that makes sense. And then, of course, you got to use good gas. But, so yeah, does that part make sense? Now, there's one thing that can take out stress too, besides harm reduction. And it's the same thing that will take out Superman. What is it? Yeah! So I'm going to introduce you all to stress kryptonite. It's called oxygen. How many people in here have heard that oxygen, deep breathing, yoga breathing is good for you? Yeah. Right? So the reason why is this, is because if this is the ShopRite, let's say we're at the ShopRite store, and this is the truck. They're unloading all the groceries off the semi-truck, and this is the loading dock. They're going to get a lot of stuff off of the truck, right? But what happens if the truck parks this far away from the loading dock? It's not going to get as much. Here's the thing. The bottom of your lungs is the loading dock for getting the most oxygen into your bloodstream. And oxygen will neutralize some of the stress hormones that happen without us being able to stop them. One of the most damaging is cortisol. You know? And so that oxygen, but in order to do that, you got to get. So here's what I want everybody to do. Put one hand on your stomach, put one hand on your chest, and what we're going to do is, on the count of 3, I just want you to take a good-sized breath for you, okay? Ready? And pay attention to which hand moves. Ready? 1, 2, 3, breathe. Oh my, you want to know what I saw? I saw a lot, not everybody. This is what I saw. I saw the air staying up here and not going there. So here's what I want you to pretend. When you take this next breath in, make your pants fit a little tighter. So as you breathe in, ready, on 3, try and make your pants fit you tighter. And then exhale, all right? That's why we do deep breathing. That's why breathing is so important. But there's one other little bit of bad news. We keep stale air in our lungs. 75% of our lung volume, from here, you know, kind of down, doesn't get used. Has anybody here heard of laughter yoga? Laughter yoga is actually a real thing. Started in 1995 by a medical doctor in India, Dr. Kataria, and he was doing research on laughing is good medicine. And what he discovered was that, well, quite honestly, whether you laugh on purpose or you know, or just something's funny. So he did a group to get together. And they met in the park, and for 2 weeks they did good because they told jokes. But then they ran out of jokes, and then the jokes got dirty, and everybody was going to stop coming. And then what he decided was, give me 1 day. And so what he discovered was that, guess what? Your body doesn't know the difference whether it's real laughter or intentional laughter. And so laughter yoga combines exercises and clapping and playful stuff. In fact, I'm going to show you my favorite, so I'm a laughter yoga leader. I'm going to show you one of my favorite stress tools that I used to use at work, all right? You're going to stand up in a second, all right? But once you do, I'm simply going to have you go ho, ho, ha, ha. You got to say ho, ho, ha, ha out loud, and then keep speed with me, all right? So go ahead. If you can stand up, it's good. If you can't stand up and your balance is off, you can do it sitting down too. All right? So we're going to start on the count of 3. We're going to go up. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Ho, ho, ha, ha. Ho, ho, ha, ha. Ho, ho, ha, ha. Ho, ha, ha. Ho, ho, ha, ha, ha. Ho, ho, ha, ha, ho, ho. Give yourselves a round of applause. Sit down. I'll explain to you what you just did. Now, you have to be careful where you do that, okay? I mean, even working in mental health, you know, I'd have to duck into the bathroom. But what that's making you do in ho, ho, ha, ha, and this is what laughter does, is it makes you get rid of that old air in the bottom of your lungs so that you're actually breathing it in. And 10 minutes of intentional kind of, you know, kind of really, I forget what the word they use is, of laughter though, is the equivalent to a cardio workout. Yeah, that's how important laughter is, can be to our health. So one of my instructors thing I went to 2 weeks ago, they said start a laughter practice, meaning that on your own, you do laughter yoga for 10 minutes. Well, guess what? 10 minutes ain't happening. But I have started doing 5 minutes in the car, and all that I'm doing is intentionally laughing. And I'm just like, and I'm driving, and the car's good because nobody can hear you, you know? But what I would tell you all to do is just try and do that for 1 minute, because your brain and your body doesn't know whether you're not laughing at something funny. It's physiologically what you're actually doing, if that makes sense. So breath. So stress kryptonite is great because that's the breathing that you can do anytime, anywhere, and nobody has to know. And if you can get oxygen into your bloodstream, you can actually lower the stress hormones that are kind of pulsating through your brain. Make sense? Okay, so that brings us to the soda bottle. Now, this is what I've used to teach stress for a long time. Because what happens with that soda bottle, he shook it up, I shook it up, and since it's been sitting there, the pressure doesn't go anywhere. In fact, there's 2 things about the soda bottle that are important. 1, the pressure doesn't go anywhere on its own. And 2, it will stay there until I open it, until we release it. Now, you can put it back in the refrigerator, doesn't matter. You know, you can kind of, to me, putting it in the refrigerator is like covering it up with food. It does nothing to release it, all right?
Yeah, but the bubbles do go. Mm-hmm. The bubbles.
Oh, maybe the bubbles disappear, but the pressure's still in there.
No, but I'm just saying, like, if you were to open this now, you would have a mess.
Oh, no, I won't, because that's exactly how I'm going to teach you all to deal with your stress. Because the most important part is that the same thing happens to all of us. Life shakes us up. And from the minute you wake up in the morning, some more than others if you have pain, that pressure starts building, 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 building. Now, the difference in people is that people will reach a point where they will either explode, or not everybody explodes, implode. And the coolest part, and I'll send this around, is that I retired this bottle because it stopped foaming. 4 months later, I went into my garage, and I was like, pardon my language, but I was like, holy shit, look at that bottle. It's imploded, you know? And I mean, I've talked about imploding with my patients for years, but actually, I had physical proof that if you do not let it out, it will hurt you. And for me, it was my migraines, if that makes sense. Now, some of you are like this. The pressure's in there, but you can't see it. So some of you know when you're, like you are kind of more, see, it's good you got this, because you're not sure. So here's the secret. You use the tools anyways. Whether you feel stress or you don't feel stress, if you use them anyways, if you're more like this, just in case you can't see it so clearly or know what you're feeling. Now, the secret is, though, how we let it out. Because a lot of people say slowly, and that's not true. What I discovered when I didn't have time to take care of my own stress, so when I started at Capital Health full-time 17 years ago, I ended up with horrible migraines. Now, I love my job. I was 8 months into my job. I loved it. I felt guilty that I got paid to come to work, honestly. I loved it that much. But I ended up with migraines 3 weeks in a row in my doctor's office. And the 3rd week he said, Carol, what's got you so stressed? And I was like, oh. Well, and what was embarrassing was I was teaching my patients to use tools to deal with their stress. But what happened was I had exercise, but during the workday, I didn't have time. Like I didn't usually get to sit down and eat lunch, not doing something else, you know, if you've been so busy at work. So I didn't step outside. I didn't do the things that you're supposed to do to kind of bring your stress levels down because there was no time. So I realized that I had to change something. And that's how I discovered the 60 seconds, because I found that if I could create the release for just, even if I only have 30 seconds, all right, that you don't have to have a lot of time as long as you do it. So the same thing, I call it the Do 60 system. And here's why. If I take this soda bottle, just so you don't get stressed out because of your computer, I'll stand over here. But the first step is you got to stop the level from building. You got to stop the level from rising. I got to stop the pressure from building up. So I got to do some. So that's step one, right? That is going to be something calming or passive. The other picture I want you to think about is a tub. Once the stress gets turned on, if you don't shut it off again, it's going to eventually overflow, and you will end up with a mess. But that's only step one, and this is where people make the mistake, because they only say, okay, I'm going to say something, let me walk away. But then they never do anything, and they never do step two, which is to actually, the secret here is to release so that the level drops. Or if you think about the tub, you turn the water off, but you pull the drain to let some of it out, because I can assure you that it will be turned back on again. Make sense? And the secret with the soda bottles and what I learned, and I'll stand over near my computer, all right? No, but is this, you don't want to go slow. Let me see if you guys can hear it or not. All right, it's kind of a dud. I think it's towards its end. But what I'm trying to do is go just a little bit at a time. And the same way works with stress. If you don't have a lot of time, if you do 15 seconds and 15 seconds, guess what? That's better than not. And what was interesting about my headaches was that they usually ended up on a Thursday or a Friday as the week went along, right? And at the end of the day. And what I found is if I could do just 15, 30, 20 seconds, so I want to share with you some ideas, all right? The most important part you have to understand is this is calming. This requires no energy, no muscles. And so these are all things that don't require energy or muscles, right? And you don't want to just have one, because you could say reading, but if you're in a meeting, how does reading serve you? You can't get your book, right? This one is active, and you see that all the things over there you have to use muscles or energy with. So that's the that you create. Make sense? And anybody here been a regular exerciser and ever had a day when you didn't exercise? How'd you feel? Weird. Did it feel weird though? Did you feel like more irritable and more? Because here's the thing about exercise. When you're doing it, you don't really realize that you're going and then the days that you miss, it follows you wherever you are, you know. So or either from the night before, because if you exercise at night, you know, you wake up the next morning and you're like, oh my God, I'm so cranky. Or, you know, the rest of the day. And so the trick is, now, music is great, but the thing I do is when I was driving here is you can also air guitar or air play a piano. So I listen to this very calming music called George Winston. It's all piano. I love him. But my release is I'm playing the piano on my steering wheel. So I know the song, so I'm like, and I pretend like I'm playing the piano. But that's the release. That's what it goes to here, and you get it to go down to here. Which is also the reason why you never want to talk to somebody when their emotions are up to here, because it covers their ears and they're not going to hear anything you said. So don't even waste your breath. Does that part make a little bit of sense for you guys? If it seems so simple, that's because it is. But you could see how you need to have things you can do all the time. So the other secret to this system is you have to do something calming and then something active. You can't just go right to the active. That would be like, you know, trying to leave the fire hydrant on, but pulling the plug. Guess what? There's a good chance it could still overflow if there's more water coming in than what's going out.
What you're saying is do ho-ho-ha-ha first.
No, that's actually a release, because I had you standing up and moving. Now, if you did just breathing and you kind of sat there and you said, well, see, here's the other thing. You're using your mouth, though. So that's why I love ho-ho-ha-ha, because it's kind of like a universal, it's like a universal tool, actually, one of those wrenches you can address. But even to just do breathing. So let me show you. So the quick three, because you always have these three with you. would be breathing, you know, practicing. Now, look at babies breathing. How do babies breathe? Their belly. So all of us in this room were born belly breathers. Somewhere along the way, we lost it, and we can get it back. It took me a while, concentrating, but now that's my normal breathing pattern now. The self-talk is saying positive self-talk, not the negative self-talk that your brain says to you, you know, like you're late, or it's kind of, you can turn it around. And then the other one to me I love is a serenity prayer. And that is just, can I do anything about it right now? And if you can, you can. If you can't, guess what? You can't. So you can always have. And the trick is figuring out what works good for you. Maybe counting to 10 works good for you. I don't know. You know, for some people, that might be the thing. But you want to have a few tools that you can always access. So that it's, because here's the thing, if you get stressed out in the middle of the day, how good does it do you to go to the gym at night? Which is what really stress management has told people to do. Go get a massage, go do this. But the truth is that we need to create the right now, and not when I get home or Saturday or, you know, whatever that is. Does that make sense? Yeah. And then the release, quite honestly, you can always do this. If I'm in a staff meeting, I could get up and I could walk to the bathroom. You know, that's where I would do my ho-ho-ha-has. You know, the talk, but you don't even have to have anybody there to talk to. The empty chair is the best chair, because that way you know you won't piss anybody off, and you could say whatever you want to do. And then the last one is what I call dump. It's different than journaling. I don't know if anybody in here journals, but here's what it means to dump. You write, you don't read what you wrote, and then you destroy it. I actually call it dump and destroy. Now, when this works really good, let's say you catch yourself being really super hungry. Well, even if before you pick up something to eat, you pick up a pen or a paper and you write. So here's the bad news. You can't use these things. In fact, I know the College of New Jersey, because I met with the Vice President of Student Affairs. She told me that they encourage students to write notes, because your brain doesn't remember it as the same way as if you use your computer. And so the release is you have to use paper and you just write. And you could say, Carol told me to do this. And just whatever it is, write it out. You know what? And then if you're still going to eat what you're going to eat, then fine. But at least you kind of dumped some of the stress out, so it isn't all stress eating. But where this really works good is at night. If you lay down to go to sleep at night and your mind won't shut off. The trick with sleep, though, is you can't do it where you sleep. You have to get up and go in another room, even if it means going in the bathroom, all right? But write it. I actually have been known to use my kitchen because I have my stove light on, so I don't have to turn on a big light in order to try and write, but I have just enough light. Like a night light in a bathroom would probably work too. But the trick is you write it, do not read it, and then go back and lay down. Now, if it's still there, you might have to come back and do another load, because there just might be so much of it that you didn't get it out, if that makes sense.
I don't even know what to write.
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.
I don't even know, I'm not even that intellectually aware.
Well, you're not supposed to be. That's the whole idea of dumping. You just start and say, Carol told me to do this. I think she's out of her mind.
I sound stupid. I wouldn't even know what to write. Like I'm a dentist. I work all day.
Yep.
And I come home. And I might have been fine.
Yep.
You know, nothing's pissed me off, nothing's irritated me, but I wouldn't even know what to...
Well, but then maybe you don't need to, because if you lay down to go to sleep at night, does your mind... Yep. So...
Maybe I'm just not intellectually or emotionally in touch with...
Then, but here's the most wonderful part, is that not everything is going to work exactly the same way for everybody. Yeah. No, I hear you. But I would actually say that you might intellectualize it more because you're telling me that you don't know what to write. And the truth of the matter is you don't need to know what to write. In fact, you could just take colors. Let me make it simple. Just randomly take colors and just use, like, the secret is anything. Even if you did coloring, right? Like you coloring pictures or something. The goal is that it comes out, but when you read it, you actually reload it. That's the idea of it, you know? And so the release is, it could be coloring, it could be, maybe for you that won't be a good, you know, tool. But does that make sense? That's how it's different than journaling. Then the trick is this, if it's something you're worried about for tomorrow that you don't want to forget, then guess what? You wake up in the morning and you have it. It's there. If it's something you don't need for tomorrow morning or the next day, then just destroy it. You know, leave it be. But it has to be, you know, and that's why I love, listen, I was coloring as a rec therapist. I had people coloring 27 years ago, and I had to go buy my books in the kids section. You know, I did, yeah. Now, the better part is you can do the disappearing dump. That is when you take toilet paper and a Sharpie, and you write, in case you live somewhere, somebody would read what you wrote, and write on the Sharpie, and then flush it. Because your brain's going to go back to thinking about this. This doesn't take away the situation. It just is so that the pressure doesn't impact you all too much. And that was a true patient. He lived in a transitional housing, and he'd never lived with anybody, so it was very stressful living with somebody, and his stress response was anger. And what would happen is he was about to get thrown out. And I said, put the anger on the paper. Don't have it, you know. And what ended up happening was he said, well, Carol, I'm afraid they're going to read it. And that's when I was like, all right, quick, grab a Sharpie. I said, go in the bathroom, put it on the toilet paper, and flush it. And he did, you know.
You said that you were working in a hospital, and the job was great, you really enjoyed it, and people admired that and everything. Continuously you did it, and you got a migraine.
Yeah.
Now, many times, you know, I see that even if you like the situation, you are very happy about it.
Absolutely.
Politicians, they are very good, but doing the same thing, create the stress.
Well, here's the thing. Stress comes wrapped in some pretty wonderful packages. I said change. I didn't say the changes are always negative. They could be positive changes. And if you think about some of the biggest life changes, you know, that's why stress isn't just negative. Stress is positive, you know, and we need a little. You know, what I learned a long time ago is that we need a little bit of stress. And just like a guitar or a piano, it needs a little stress on the string in order to make beautiful music. We get in trouble when it's too much.
No, but I also think, for example, with me, when I'm at work, I mean,
You're-
I'm in charge,
you're-
so I have
Yeah.
to be controlled.
Yeah.
And then when you're home, you don't
Yeah.
have those same.
Yep. It's a structure, yeah. And you know what, too, I think about being a dentist is that you know, like, it really is your,
The patient,
Yeah.
the person connecting with the patient.
yeah, you're,
Getting them through the procedure.
exactly, yeah,
And I would say 99% of the patients are great.
Yeah.
And then there's others who I call emotional vampires.
oh, yeah. No, it's true.
They suck the energy out of you.
Well, that's good.
I don't mean any disrespect.
No.
That they're doing it deliberately. They don't even realize
What,
they're doing it.
listen, setting boundaries is one of the most important things you do. I have a couple more tools I want to share with you all right? No, that's all right. This is good. This is important. So if you had to leave at 8, let me know because it's 3 minutes till, all right? So did anybody have to leave at 8?